The camera opens on silence. Just a door, and the sound of distant laughter that doesn't belong here anymore. Sometimes, the people we wait for the longest are the ones time tries hardest to make us forget. But what happens when memory fades, and love stands right in front of you, unrecognized? A soldier returns home after years at war. His hands tremble as he touches the doorknob, the same one he used to turn before bedtime stories and whispered prayers. But on the other side of that door waits the hardest moment of his life. Not battle. Not fear. Recognition. He had replayed this day 1,000 times across deserts and sleepless nights, the hug, the smile, the sound of her voice calling Daddy. But now, he isn't sure. The years have been long. And the war didn't just take time, it changed faces, hearts, and memories. Everyone knows that feeling, waiting to be remembered by someone you love. A child grows, a parent fades from photographs, and time writes its own distance. He left when she was 4, small enough to hold his finger like a promise. Now she's 7. Her laughter sounds older in the videos his wife sent him. Her drawings have new colors, new shapes, but never his face. From the corner of the porch, a stuffed toy lies half forgotten, the one he sent from overseas. He bends down to pick it up, smiling faintly. But as he stands, his reflection catches in the window, a man older, harder, eyes that have seen too much. He whispers, "Would I recognize me?" The door creaks open. Inside, a little girl's laughter echoes, and then stops. Her toy slips from her hands. She stares, at the uniform, the medals, the face she can't name. He kneels, heart trembling. He doesn't move closer. Because this isn't a reunion yet. This is the second before memory wakes up. And in that silence, his war begins again. He thought coming home would feel like peace. But standing there, in that warm room that smelled like cinnamon and sunlight, he felt like a stranger in his own story. His daughter's eyes, once bright with recognition, now searched him like she was trying to solve a puzzle time had erased. Her mother stepped out from the kitchen, hands trembling, lips parting to speak his name, but she stopped herself. The little girl stood between them, frozen, confused. "Who is that, Mama?" she asked softly. And those words, those tiny, innocent words, hit harder than any explosion he'd ever heard. He smiled through the ache, trying to mask the heartbreak behind calm eyes. Every second stretched, a tug of war between memory and time. His wife's gaze carried silent apology, but he shook his head gently. This was his moment to earn back what the years had stolen. He knelt again, trying not to cry. The child took a step back, clutching her toy. And for the first time in his life, he realized love could hurt even when it's right there in front of you. He remembered the night before he left, how she'd fallen asleep on his chest, whispering, "Don't go." He remembered promising he'd come back soon. But soon turned into years. And years turned into distance that letters couldn't fill. Now, the distance had a name. It was her silence. He searched her face, hoping for any flicker of recognition. But she only stared, shy and uncertain. Then, her small voice broke the stillness again. "You look like my daddy, but older." And in that moment, the tears he'd been holding finally fell. Because she was right. He wasn't the same man anymore. War had taken something, not just from him, but from them. The home looked the same, yet felt different. Photographs lined the hallway, moments frozen in time, his smile beside hers, birthdays, holidays, but all from another lifetime. The space between those frames told its own story, one of waiting, surviving, and forgetting. He sat quietly at the table as his wife poured coffee, her hands still shaking. They spoke without words, every glance, every sigh, a confession. He didn't ask what the years had been like, he could see it in the faint lines around her eyes, the way her smile fought to stay steady. From the living room, faint humming, his daughter singing a tune he didn't know. Once upon a time, he knew every song she loved. Now, he was learning her all over again. And maybe, she'd have to learn him too. He tried to remember how it felt to be her hero, how easy it used to be. Now, even his voice sounded foreign to her. He looked down at his uniform, the patches, the medals, tokens of survival, not belonging. And he thought, what good is coming home if home doesn't remember you? But then, a small sound. Tiny footsteps. She peeked around the corner, clutching her toy. Her eyes studied him, not afraid now, just curious. And somewhere deep inside him, a fragile hope began to flicker. He knew he couldn't force recognition. So instead of reaching for her, he reached for her world. He sat on the floor beside her toy set, careful not to disturb it. The same soldier who'd faced fire and loss now fumbled with a plastic doll, pretending to build a tiny house beside her. At first, she just watched. Then, a laugh, small but real. The first one since he'd stepped through the door. It wasn't directed at him, but it lived in the same space, and that was enough. Her mother filmed quietly from the kitchen doorway, not for the internet, not for likes, but to remember this fragile bridge forming between two hearts learning each other again. He held up the toy and whispered, "This one's yours, right?" She nodded, cautious. And though she didn't call him daddy yet, she didn't run this time. He smiled softly, feeling something shift, a thread pulling tight between the man he was and the father he used to be. He realized love doesn't return in a single moment. It returns in pieces, one glance, one laugh, one name at a time. That evening, she sat beside him on the couch, not too close, but close enough to share the same blanket edge. Her mother placed a photo album on the table. Old pictures, the ones that once filled their walls before deployment. Tiny hands flipped the pages. There she was, a baby in his arms, asleep on his chest. Her small brow furrowed. "That's me." He nodded, voice trembling. "That's you." She stared for a long time. Then looked back at him, then at the photo again. Her eyes lingered, connecting the two faces like solving a puzzle her heart almost remembered. He didn't push. He just waited. Because sometimes, love needs space to remember where it belongs. Outside, the light dimmed. And for the first time that day, she leaned her head gently on his arm, just for a second. But for him, it was everything. That night, he couldn't sleep. The house was quiet, too quiet. Every creak of the floor, every whisper of the wind against the window pulled him back to memories of tense and faraway sounds of danger. But this silence was heavier. Because it wasn't the silence of war, it was the silence of distance between hearts under the same roof. He stood by her bedroom door, careful not to wake her. The moonlight fell across her small frame curled under the blanket. Her hair had grown longer, the same soft curls he used to braid before deployment. He wanted to whisper her name, but he stopped himself. He didn't want to break whatever fragile bridge was beginning to form. Instead, he watched her sleep, the way her lips moved like she was dreaming of something kind. He wondered if somewhere in that dream, he existed. If maybe, her heart remembered what her mind could not. On the dresser sat a photo, him in uniform, her as a toddler in his arms. He picked it up, fingers trembling. How do you explain to a child that time can steal faces, but not love? He set the frame back gently and whispered. "Tomorrow. Tomorrow, I'll find the words." And in that moment, you could feel the loop forming, the quiet before memory wakes. The air itself seemed to wait for morning. Morning arrived in soft gold. The smell of pancakes, the faint hum of the radio, the warmth of something that almost felt normal again. He sat at the kitchen table, hands wrapped around a cup of coffee, steam rising like ghosts of moments gone by. His daughter entered, dragging her stuffed toy by the arm. She didn't hide this time. Her eyes met his for a brief moment before she sat across from him, silent, cautious, curious. He smiled gently. "Good morning." She didn't reply, but she didn't look away either. That was enough. He began to talk, not about war, not about pain, but about simple things. How pancakes were her favorite. How he used to flip them too high when she was little, and she'd laugh until she fell off her chair. She blinked, eyes narrowing like a memory was knocking on the door of her heart. He felt it, the flicker, the almost. Her hand reached toward the syrup bottle. He leaned slightly to help, and their fingers brushed. It was small. But it was enough to make the world stop for a second. He saw it in her face, a half-smile, the first one truly meant for him. That was the moment the story began to turn. The recognition hadn't come yet, but hope had returned home. Later that day, she played outside in the yard. The sky burned soft orange, the air alive with the hum of evening. He stood on the porch, watching, afraid to blink in case the moment slipped away. For the first time, her laughter filled the air again, the sound that used to be his anchor overseas. Then, the ball rolled toward his boots. She ran after it and stopped. He bent down, picked it up, and held it out to her with a gentle smile. She froze again, that same pause from the doorway, but softer this time. No fear. Just something deep, unspoken. He said softly, "You always loved this game, didn't you, Emily?" The world seemed to hold its breath. Her small hands stilled. Her lips parted. No one had said her name like that in years, that soft, proud tone only one man had. She blinked once. Twice. And then her eyes filled with tears. Her toy slipped from her arms as she whispered, "Daddy." It was barely a word. More a breath, a miracle. He dropped to his knees before she even finished it, arms open, face wet with tears that didn't care who saw. She ran into him, no hesitation this time, no space left between. He held her so tightly it was as if he could squeeze the lost years into this single second. And as her small arms wrapped around his neck, everything, every mile, every missed birthday, every fear, melted into the golden light around them. Sometimes recognition doesn't come from the eyes. It comes from the sound of your name said by someone who never truly forgot you. The camera lingers on them, father and daughter in the yard, wrapped in a quiet miracle. Her laughter now louder, freer. His face softened, lighter. In that embrace lived the end of one war, and the beginning of healing from another. Her mother watched from the window, tears streaming silently down her cheeks. For years, she'd carried both love and loneliness, now both emotions flooded together like sunlight after a storm. He whispered against his daughter's hair, "You remembered me." She nodded into his shoulder. "I think I just forgot for a little while." He smiled, pressing his forehead against hers. "That's okay. I never forgot you." It wasn't about memory anymore. It was about presence, about being here, in this moment, alive. The camera could have ended there, the perfect reunion. But instead, it stays just a little longer, watching him lift her into his arms and spin her around under the fading light. Laughter echoes. Shadows stretch long across the grass. And for the first time in years, the house feels like home again. Later that night, the world was quiet again, but it was a different kind of quiet. The kind that feels full instead of empty. He tucked her in, smoothing her hair back like he used to. She clutched his dog tag in her small hand, refusing to let go. "Don't leave again, okay," she whispered. He smiled softly. Not for a very long time. Downstairs, he sat by the window, the same one where he once stared at the emptiness of memory. Now, through it, he saw the glow of her nightlight, the rise and fall of her breathing. The house, the family, the laughter, it all felt fragile and eternal at the same time. He thought about the battles he'd fought, and realized the hardest one was right here. Coming home, and being seen again. Outside, wind chimes sang softly in the night breeze. He looked up at the stars and whispered, "Some wars don't end on the battlefield. Some end when you finally hear your name again." The screen fades to black. Just before it does, we hear her voice, sleepy and warm, from upstairs. "Good night, Daddy." And in that final echo, the story ends not with words but with peace.